This happened in January or February of 2002. I, a female, had just turned 21 and was living with my father in Ohio. For context, I was extremely naive and living a pretty directionless life. I had grown up in an affluent area of Seattle, gone to a private school, and went on to college and then dropped out. I was dealing with major depression, partying a lot, hanging with the wrong crowd, and hooking up with random strangers. My mom didn't know what to do with me, so she sent me down to live with my dad across the country in Columbus. Now, I'd been living in Ohio with my dad and pretty much lived like an entitled teenager. I did have a job in retail, but other than that, I just sat around and didn't do much. My dad is an alcoholic, and it didn't help much. At some point, seeing him passed out in the living room one morning and working a dead-end job kinda got me wanting to return home to Seattle. My mom was unwilling to let me live with her again, so I had called my best friend at the time. Her mom was like my family. They didn't have a lot of money, but they bought me a bus ticket and a train ticket for back home. They said I could stay with them until I got back on my feet, and I was very relieved. My dad was sad to see me go, but he agreed to drop me off at the bus station downtown. The thing is, he had to take me before his work shift. My bus didn't leave until later in the afternoon, so I'd basically have to wait from 9 a.m. until we boarded. My dad was very nervous about me leaving there. He warned me that the station was in a rough part of Columbus, and that I needed to be careful. I'm thinking, yeah, okay. I was completely oblivious. Dad drove me to the Greyhound station. It was surrounded by people waiting for their buses, a few stragglers outside the entrance. It was cold outside that day. Inside the bus terminal, it was fairly empty. Dad helped me bring my luggage inside, 2 large suitcases that contained all of my possessions. If I didn't want to be dragging around with me all day, I had to pay to store them in a locker by the desk. I can't remember exactly how much, but I was broke and I couldn't spare money for that. I looked wearily at the clock, and my dad looked at me with sadness. I could tell that he was worried about me traveling by myself. I hugged him and tried to look as confident as possible. We said our goodbyes, and he left. I've traveled numerous times, made several trips by plane by myself, and have traveled to various countries with groups. I was not adverse to adventure. What I was not good at doing was reading people. I genuinely saw the good in everyone and had never had a negative experience, even at 4 a.m. in downtown Seattle. If you know anything about Seattle, it has a robust public transportation system, and I was no stranger to weirdos, drunk people, and hostile exchanges between people on the bus. I'd usually just ignore people or continue walking. In this situation, I felt I was totally in my element, as I'd taken public transportation many times alone. Back to the Greyhound station. I decided to go outside and have a cigarette. The conundrum was that I had to keep an eye on my 2 suitcases, so I positioned them near the front desk in such a way that I could see them clearly from the front entrance. I then head outside to get my nicotine fix. I stand off to the right side of the door. I'm smoking and trying to shuffle through my purse, which had contained my passport. As I'm shuffling around, a man with a large knitted hat asks me for a cigarette. I glance at him. Sure thing. I hand him one and a light. We chat briefly, and I study his face. He's not unattractive, not scary looking, maybe a little disheveled, but I couldn't tell if he was homeless. No immediate red flags. I felt safe as the outside of the terminal was littered with people, some smoking like me, others walking briskly to their destinations. Notably, an older gentleman is standing opposite of me to the left side of the entrance. As I'm speaking to the man in the hat, this older gentleman seems to be staring at me intently. The man in the hat asks where I'm from, if I'm catching a bus, and comments about the cold. In passing, I casually lament that I'm running low on smokes. He looks at me and says, "Oh, there's a gas station around the corner. You can grab some from there." I think about it for a moment. My bus wouldn't be here for a couple hours, so I could easily grab a pack and be back in time, but something stops me. I remember my luggage was sitting unattended. I tell him I'll think about it, and then turn to head back inside. Hours pass, and every once in a while I would go back outside again to smoke. The man in the hat seems to be there every time. At one point, he mentions the gas station again. He says, "It's just right there. I can take you." Again, I decline. It's not because I'm afraid. It's because I'm worried about my luggage. I head back inside. The last time I go outside, the street is eerily quiet. No one is there. I grab another cigarette and place my purse on the ground by my feet. I look up, and the man in the hat is there. He asks for money, and this is where my gut finally turns and I feel uneasy. I say I don't have much and I can't help him, and I hurriedly finish my cigarette as I'm suddenly very aware that my purse is laying next to my feet, exposed. I lean over and quickly grab it up and mumble something about getting back inside. As I raise up, the man in the hat reaches out and immediately grabs my purse and says, "Let me help you with that." My body seems to drain itself, and I immediately grab my purse closer to me. "I'm good," I say. The man in the hat suddenly switches from harmless random dude into nasty thief. "Give me the purse, you bitch," he hisses. He says it through clenched teeth, like he's trying to be quiet. I'm struggling against him now, desperate, as I realize no one is there to help me. I start screaming, "Help." The man in the hat is shoving me with his hip and pushes me against the wall. "Shut the fuck up." I'm desperate now. This guy could easily pull out a knife and shank me, or punch me. I cling to my purse, hoping to God the cheap handles hold together. His hands are on top of mine and he shoves me again, calling me a bitch. I scream louder. From the left I suddenly hear, "Are you okay?" The old man that I had seen earlier at the train station suddenly steps out. He seemingly steps out of nowhere and loudly asks what's going on. I shove the man in the hat hard with my left thigh, and I think he realized in that moment that if he did anything to me, he could be identified. He lets go of my purse and runs off. I'm shaking and run tearfully inside, leaving the older gentleman outside. I was too frightened to say thank you. I spent the rest of that day hovering by the front desk. I was terrified. I thought of the 3-day trip ahead of me and shook with dread. I held my purse in my hands with a vice grip. When my time finally came to board the bus station, I glanced in terror over to the other passengers. No way I was sitting next to anyone. Every person had become a potential criminal. I slumped into a seat covered by the window. Then I heard a voice behind me. "I was going to warn you," said the voice. I whipped my head around, and there was the older gentleman, casually sitting behind me. My eyes were probably as large as dinner plates. "I knew he was targeting you. You need to be more careful." I tearfully thanked him. He just stared out the window and nodded, and we didn't speak again. That moment changed my life. My struggle with the man in the hat must have only taken about 30 seconds, but the repercussions lasted even 20 years later. I think back on how adamant that man in the hat was about getting me around the corner to the gas station. My hair still stands on end when I think about it. Would he have robbed me for a few measly dollars in my purse? Murdered me? Who knows? It chills my blood even to think about it. I spent the next 3 days paranoid and unwilling to leave my luggage unattended. I clung to my purse and used it as a pillow on the train when laying down. When I used the restroom, I rolled my luggage in the tiny bathroom with me. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. In chilling contrast, the train trip was quiet and uneventful. Staring out the window as we entered Washington State, the snowfall and evergreen trees weighed down by heavy snow. I was no longer the naive and reckless young woman in the Greyhound station. I was a changed person. Man in the hat at the Greyhound station? Let's never meet. I apologize in advance since I'm not a good writer, but I'll do my best to share my experience. To better paint the picture, here's a description of myself at the time of this incident. I was 5'5", 26 years old, with medium-length blonde bleached hair. I was curvy, 175 pounds, wearing black high-waisted tights and a pink crop top. 3 years ago, I was walking home late at night from my friend's house. It was dark, and at the time, I had lived in a rough part of the large city. I've had many sketchy situations that I've gotten myself out of, so I guess I felt sort of invincible, like nothing truly scary could happen to me. When I walk alone, I always stay very alert and aware of my surroundings for my own safety, just in case. About halfway home, and roughly 10 minutes to my apartment, I noticed a van starting to tail me. I was used to this, since in my city it's very common for young women in a rough area to get propositioned for sex. It was embarrassing how desensitized I was to this. I did my usual and crossed the road so that I would be walking beside the traffic heading in the other direction. I wasn't scared, just annoyed. Then, the van turned down a side street and got back onto the road I was on and pulled up to me. At this point, I still wasn't scared. Again, this had happened so many times, and it never mattered if I was wearing something that showed more skin, or if I was wearing a winter coat zipped from just below my chin all the way down to my ankles. That area is notorious for that type of activity. I decided to be firm and told the person sternly that I was not interested. I noticed that there were 2 men in the van. They looked almost identical and may have been twins or even brothers. Both men had a very, very dark complexion, dark eyes and short dark hair. The van didn't move. I was super annoyed and crossed the road again to get away. At this point, I figured it would be enough for them to stop following me, but they didn't. They circled back every time I would cross the road. I had never felt that I needed to put this much effort into getting a horny pervert to leave me alone, so this is when I started feeling unsafe. They zipped past me at the speed traffic was flowing in, and I yelled for them to fuck off. I thought it finally worked. It had been 3 minutes and I hadn't seen the van, so I thought I was in the clear. Just in case, I had pulled out my phone and was getting ready to call my sister that I had lived with. But just then, the van had pulled up quickly to me, and before I could even blink, one of the men had jumped out of the van, opened the back door, and approached me in a quick and aggressive manner, as if he was about to scoop me up and throw me in the vehicle. The traffic in that area is very inconsistent. It was dead, and that's what I imagined they were waiting for. Just as the man had put his hands on me, I tilted my phone and said, "You are being filmed in my live video chat." I gave my friends your license plate number, and the police had been notified. I was so terrified, but I didn't let it show. I stayed as calm as I could, and the man paused like he was considering if I was bluffing or telling the truth. So I tilted the phone more, as if to give the fake audience a better look at him, and that's when he jumped right into the van and they'd sped off. I have never been out the same since that night. I'm afraid of walking alone now, even in the daytime. Stay safe out there. So 2 creeps in a van, let's not ever meet. I hope karma finds you both soon. I was reminded of him just last week. After almost 5 years of not hearing or seeing him, he reappeared just recently. I'll try my best to summarize this nightmare. It happened in 2017, and during that time we went a whole year without having neighbors on either side, so basically we're cramped between 2 empty houses. The streetlight in our lot had broken, and despite multiple reports to the council to fix it, nobody did. One evening, my family went out for groceries, and I was left home alone. The gate was still wide open when they had left, because the water pipe was located outside. I used it all the time back then. I had rabbits, so I used it to fill their water bowls, and that day was no different. The sun was already setting by the time I went out to fill the bowls, feed the rabbits, and lock the gate. It was literally 5 minutes after I'd locked the gate that someone was outside. Since the sun was already low on the horizon, and the street light was broken, I could barely see his face. He was outside with the van, shouting for my attention. He said something about his company sending him over to do some property surveillance. It was suspicious, so I had ignored him and went inside. Later on, when the night got dark, my family still hadn't returned. I was inside watching Chicken Little when I heard some commotion outside. I didn't directly look at it, but I stole some glances and saw someone outside, like literally in front of my gate. He was shouting for my attention again, and guess who it was? Yep, it was the guy from before. I recognized his voice and again paid him no attention. After a seemingly long few minutes, it was quiet outside. I took another peek out and holy shit, he was attempting to climb into my house. I was so shocked that I couldn't even move, but luckily during that time we had a dog named Buck, who passed away not long after. He was probably napping in one of his hiding spots and sensed some presence. As soon as the guy saw Buck coming at him, he stopped climbing and rode away on his bike. No more van. That was that. But ever since then, I kept seeing him. How do I know it was him when I can't even see his face in the first place? Well, because after that particular incident, every now and then he was there, always hanging with someone literally outside our gate with his bike. He's always making a weird sound too, like when you purse and smack your lips. And every time I reported it to my dad, the guy would always ride away as soon as he saw my dad checking. One time, I was in the backyard collecting my laundry. If you stand on the left side of the gate, but facing in, you can see the area in our backyard where we wash and dry out laundry, and he was standing right there, making those weird sounds again, which drew my attention. I yelled for my dad, and once again, when he saw him, he booked it out of there. This had been going on for almost a month. While he hadn't actually posed as a threat, it was enough for me to feel uncomfortable and unsafe to even go out at night by myself. Oh, but it got worse. My room is on the other side of the house, so I basically have a window that faces the front of the house. My room is situated on the right side, if you were facing the home, so my direct view is the overgrown bushes that cover the fence. If I peek my head out my window and look to the right, I can clearly see the gate. One night, while I was in my room doing some work on my desk, the window to my left I had left open because I had always loved the night breeze. I don't remember exactly how long I was working for, but all of a sudden I felt this dread washing over me. It's like I wasn't safe in the comfort of my room anymore, like I was being watched. I looked out the window and tried to see in the dark, and there he was. I knew it was him. Somehow, he had managed to squeeze between the bushes and was hanging onto the fence. He saw me, and I could feel him smiling at me, and then he made those awful lip-smacking sounds again. Nope, I ran out of there like lightning. Again, I reported it to my dad, and again, he rode out of there before we could catch him in the act. Sometimes my dad and sister thought I was imagining things, but that's because whenever they would look outside, they would see nothing. But I was the one who saw him every time. But I know for a fact that he's real, and it's the same person every time. This continued on for about a month, so 2 months in total. He'd come around, taunt me with his lip-smacking skill, and ride away before my dad or sister can get a look at him. And then one day, he stopped coming, and I hadn't seen or heard his stupid noises until last week. I was home alone again. My sister was caught up at work, and my dad had left to pick up my brother from his workplace. I was in the living room watching TV when I heard that awfully familiar lip-smacking sound. At this point, our streetlight is still broken. We've installed some fence lights, but this bastard hid in the dark where the light was too faint to reach. He is out there with his bike again, only this time I heard him giggle. I'd never heard him giggle before, and no, it wasn't the cute kind of giggle, it sounded malicious. Tried my hardest to ignore him, to not pay him any attention, but he was out there making all kinds of noises. Over a year ago, we got a new dog, Gibbs. He was a rescued stray. He must have heard him too, and as soon as the guy saw Gibbs coming at him, he rode away again, and that was last week. So 5 years ago, he terrified me to the point where I was so afraid of being outside at my own at night, even if it was just to pick up laundry. Sometimes at night I can't even sleep without checking every corner of the house to make sure he's not there, and for a short period I even slept with the lights on. Even though he doesn't actually do anything physically threatening, him playing his psycho tricks over a long period is enough to make me feel unsafe in my own home. Just when he was finally out of my head, he came back, and worse still, I haven't even seen his face, but he's seen mine. I hope I won't ever have to see his face. His presence alone is malicious as is. So stalker from the dark, please, please, let's not meet ever again. So, thank you all who've made it this far. And as always with these videos that come out after me leaving for a while, I apologize for the inconvenience of leaving again. This time was for a good reason. I had a big test coming up for getting ready for college, as you know, I'm a high schooler. So I wanted to take a lot of time and focus on my schoolwork and studying. So I know this isn't my usual type of video, and I'll try to get back to making those iceberg videos pretty soon here, but I thought this would be an interesting change of pace while still staying on kind of the scary stuff I like to do. I'm probably going to make more of these in the future, just for the sole fact that it is nice to have some content out, especially some that I can work on and it doesn't take me a day of research doing. Especially if you guys do like these, let me know in the comments so I can continue doing them. But thank you all once again for your great support, even when I haven't been making videos. I love you all more than you would ever know, and thank you. Hopefully I'll get to see you very soon in the next video. Goodbye.